fast as they possibly could. So that's good. So we're recording, and the recording where we are now, we've completed items 1 and 2, our introductions. We've approved our minutes from the May 8th. And I was just beginning the discussion on item 3, saying we were not getting into the HRA modeling yet because we recognized a reality at our last meeting that our DHR team and the consultants had 4 meetings of SEBC this past week. And if there was only a reality of what they could get analyzed. The good news is we have a couple months that we're going to have more time to breathe, to delve into detail. So be patient today. If we're not at the level where people anticipated we should be, it's not intentional. I think it's where a reality with the team was. And so we will get to getting things out, I think, a little sooner. Plus, in fairness to the DHR, they are now dealing with, this week was closeout for benefit sign up, so open enrollment. So again, I thank you all for what you were able to accomplish in a really busy time frame. So
thank you.
With that preface, let us go to item 3, and I'll turn it over to you, Faith, if you want to.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and I appreciate everyone's graciousness this afternoon. We don't have Carol Mick with us. Carol is usually our virtual platform navigator, and she does it beautifully. So together, Kristen and I are trying to do this. What I'd like to do, the next agenda item specific to the health reimbursement account and individual marketplace discussion, we've consolidated into one presentation today. That discussion item, as well as the modeling impacts for the eligibility changes that the group discussed at the May 8th meeting. So we're going to have a couple of different folks that are going to be walking through these slides together. We've got some folks that we'd like to introduce the team to today from Willis Towers Watson, from the VIA Benefits Group. So that's the team within the Towers organization that manages the Medicare marketplace. And we've asked them to join us today to help walk us through some of the basic components of how an HRA works in the marketplace, and how retirees would potentially interact with a marketplace navigator, as well as select from the various options. One thing very important that I want to note, there's been a lot of questions around special enrollment rights, guaranteed issue rights with regards to the state potentially considering an HRA in the future, and how that would impact our retirees moving away from an employer-sponsored plan and into the individual marketplace for coverage. So we're going to try to tackle some of those questions as well today. There's information in the appendix portion of the materials that we've distributed, and I think as time permits, we'll be able to pivot to some of those questions, as well as take additional questions that subcommittee members may have that aren't included in the content. But I certainly we welcome dialogue and interaction with the participants in today's discussion, because again, we brought them in as subject matter experts and as licensed insurance agents to hopefully address some of those questions that you've had. And then again, we've got Joanna Adams from the pension office and Margaret Temkin from Chiron that will be here to walk us through those OPEB modeling options in the latter part of our discussion today.
So this is very high level. And for retirees listening in, the recommendations before were if we were going to look at HRAs, and again, the recommendation thus far had not been about current retirees, but into the future 25 or 2015. I just want to preface that so that persons listening in were aware of that. And Senator Pettyjohn, you have joined us too, I understand. So welcome, sir.
All right, so Lieutenant Governor, what I'd like to do, I think at this point is hand over to the Willis Towers Watson team. And I know we have a couple of folks on from Towers Watson this afternoon. I see Chris Giovanello, our consultant actuary from the Towers team. Chris, I'm wondering if you would be so kind as to help maybe kick this off. I believe we have Allison Klee as well from the VIA Benefits team. And I think we may have some others, but I need a little help in calling them out and doing some introductions so we can make sure they have access to audio and video as needed.
Yeah, thank you, Faith. So you stole my thunder a little bit. I was going to provide a brief intro, but I think you did a great job there. So we do have a few folks from our VIA Benefits team. So Allison Klee is joining us. I think she's already been added as a panelist, but also joining us today are Dennis Wilden and Paula Stander. So Faith, if we could get them added as panelists as well, that would be great. Let me know if you need me to send you any information on that. But really, as Faith alluded to, we have Allison, Dennis, and Paula joining us today. They are from VIA Benefits, which is our marketplace solution and platform. But they're really here today as subject matter experts related to the individual marketplace and more specifically HRA administration. So we've heard a number of questions and comments at prior meetings related to HRAs. So we wanted to bring in the experts who deal with this stuff every day and are really best equipped to answer some of the questions that the committee members and also the public may have or may have already raised at prior meetings. So with that, I'm happy to turn it over to Allison to maybe provide a brief intro. And it does look like Dennis and Paula have been added as well. So thank you, Faith. We should have access to everyone we need so far.
Awesome. And Chris, before Allison takes over, I have the presentation displayed on the virtual platform. I'm happy to be navigator, or if one of you would prefer to screen share and take control of that, you can do that as well.
Just let us know your preference. And Senator Townsend is here too. So Senator, speak up anytime you need to as well. Okay.
And Faith, you have the presentation up if you want to run with it, that works for us, but I have it ready too if you need me to take control at any time.
Okay, all right. We've got the deck up, you should be able to see it.
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Faith, and appreciate everyone's time today. As Chris mentioned, I'm Allison Klee, one of the regional vice presidents here on the VIA Benefits side for the marketplace with Willis Towers Watson. And we also have Paula Stander is on the line. Paula, can you hear us? And Dennis Wilden is also on the line. I know they're just being added as panelists. Paula Stander is one of our retiree meeting ambassadors with VIA Benefits. And what that means is she helps retirees in going through the transition from a group plan to the marketplace. And Dennis Wilden is on the line as well. And he is one of our senior benefit advisors that helps retirees make an informed plan decision. So as Chris mentioned, we'll talk about the HRA, how that works, how a marketplace works, and please feel free to stop us along the way with questions and we're happy to clarify. Dennis and Paula, are you on? Can you hear us as well?
Yes, I'm on. I can hear.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
Same.
Good.
I can hear you as well.
Okay, great. Okay. So Faith, I think we can get started here if we go to the next slide. Okay, so I know you all may have talked about an HRA in the past. Sometimes it's good to hear it 2 and 3 times, but we want to just make sure everybody's on the same page from an acronym perspective too. We love acronyms. It seems to be in the Medicare world. An HRA is simply a health reimbursement arrangement. And what that means, it's a tax-free shelter where employers can offer a set dollar amount to help retirees reimburse themselves for their Medicare expenses. That could be anything from a premium, copay, coinsurance, prescriptions. Also, Part B, as in boy, can be reimbursed through an HRA. So the HRA is a notional account, meaning the employer can earmark those dollars for the retiree, but it is the employer's money until an expense is incurred on behalf of the retiree. So again, tax-free shelter, employer can push the money back to the retiree once an expense is incurred. So it's an important feature of the health reimbursement account. if we go to the next slide, there are a couple of.
Sorry
There you
about
go.
that.
That's
It's
one
just
more
not
slide
the same,
before
not
that.
having Carol here.
One more slide before that, Faith.
We're in a hurry to get done. All right. Carol.
Okay, well, we can talk about this slide too, it's fine.
Can I just
Well,
make a
one thing
comment?
to note, when an employer
Sorry.
sets up an
Secretary
HRA,
Geisenberger is speaking. I'm sorry, Allison, the secretary is saying something. Go
I
ahead.
just want to make a comment because it happens, having been through this with the Retirement Benefit Study Committee. And you just, I think, fell into this a second ago. No matter how many times people say health reimbursement account, it is not it is a health reimbursement arrangement. It is not, there is something called an HRA. That's something totally different. So if people accidentally use the word account, it's an accident. It is a health reimbursement arrangement. It is not a personal account that you can use for your health expenditures. It is always the employer's money. And I guarantee you that people will accidentally refer to it as an account during this presentation and in future presentations. And that's an accident. It is an arrangement. And it is not an account for the personal benefit of held for your personal benefit that you can will to your heirs and things like that. There is something like that out there, but that's a totally different thing. So I just want to be clear.
That's a
with
good
that.
distinction. We appreciate that. That is very important to note. Retirees are not going to wake up on January 1st, if this was going to be put in play, and wake up with their employer's dollars in a bank account. That's there for their expenses and there to spend on whatever they want. The IRS does dictate exactly what those expenses can be reimbursed for. It's called a 213D tax code. So anything under the 213 tax code can be reimbursed. It is the employer's discretion on what they allow to be reimbursed under that 213D umbrella. So the most common things, like I started to mention, are those premiums, out-of-pocket costs, Part B reimbursement, anything that falls under the 213D tax code. The other thing that employers can also decide on is whether they allow those dollars to roll over from year to year. So a good example of that is if I choose a 0 premium Medicare Advantage plan and there is no premium, my employer's allocation can roll from year to year.
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
apologize.
Allison. Before you proceed, I'm getting a text or two in, because we don't have Carol here, our usual tech person. Are those off screen? Are you all able to see us or see the screen? Because I've gotten a couple of messages from persons calling in that aren't able to see the screen. The video, is everybody able to? I know Senator Peterson said she couldn't. Is everybody able to see? Thus
I can
far,
see the
anybody
screen.
not able to see?
Madam Chair, I can see now, but for a moment, it froze and then it kicked me out and now it just came back up. So
All right, so hopefully Senator
minute or
Peterson, maybe
so.
she'll come back in. Okay, I apologize for the interruption. Continue, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I can see the screen. I can't see anybody, but I could see the screen. So that's what's important. So as I started to mention, the rollover can definitely be set up with an HRA. Also, you can have joint accounts. So again, the employer's discretion, can a retiree and a spouse share an account? Yes. And then those reimbursement mechanics of the HRA is the retiree has to incur an expense. So a premium needs to be paid, for example. The retiree can submit the request for reimbursement. And when we talk more about a marketplace, that can happen in either a manual process or in our case via benefits. We do have carrier connectivity. So the carriers, when the retiree enrolls into a carrier, they can send us a file and then we can push out those monies automatically to a retiree in what we call an automatic reimbursement fashion. Okay, if you work with an outside HRA vendor, if you do not work with a marketplace and you work strictly with an HRA vendor, they can submit those, the retiree can submit their expenses to the HRA vendor. Typically, that's more of a manual process because they do not have carrier connectivity like a marketplace would. So there are different ways the retiree can get reimbursed, but from the automatic reimbursement fashion, that is for premium payments only. So I will pause there. Any questions on the mechanics of the HRA and how it can work? Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Keep
Okay.
going.
All right, if we can keep going. Okay, thanks, Faith. So ways to enroll into an individual Medicare plan. So I haven't put it on this slide, but I just wanted to make note of it. Retirees can also call 1-800-Medicare or go to medicare.gov to shop individual Medicare plans. So that just states the obvious, but there are other ways to enroll into an individual Medicare plan. That would be one, you can call a carrier that is local to your area. So for example, if you call, I don't know, Highmark, Aetna, United, etc., you can call directly into those carriers. I worked for a carrier for a long time. I've been with the marketplace now for going on 11 years, but those carriers are going to tell you specific details that are specific to their plans only. So that you're not going to get an objective individual that would be talking to the retirees. They're going to talk to you only about their plan offerings. Typically, there's no HRA administration included in a single carrier offering in the individual markets. And you're not going to also have the best plan comparison and pricing because you're only talking to one carrier. Secondly, you can go through a local broker. I mentioned this to Faith. My mom is a local broker and she represents some plans in Florida, not all plans, but some. They can be agnostic, but they're typically aware of the commission schedule that's built into each individual plan. So they may or may not steer a retiree to one plan or another because of that. Typically, the HRA administration is not included and brokers can compare whatever options they represent. So some brokers may offer 3 options, some may work with 5 carriers, it just depending on that individual broker.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question for Allison. What does agnostic mean?
Oh, sure. Objective, agnostic, not steering you to one plan or another. Does that make sense? So when I mean agnostic, it's really, I don't have a dog in the fight as to which carrier you enroll into. I'm doing the best thing for you as an individual, making sure the plan meets your individual needs. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So then we go into a marketplace, and that's one example of what I represent via benefits. It's one of the marketplace platforms that is out there. So on the marketplaces, typically you have many carriers to choose from. The agnostic broker or benefit advisor that I'd like to say objective, let's just use that word, uses technology to look at things such as what are your doctors? What are your prescriptions? Let's look at all the different carriers in your zip code. One good example I brought up yesterday, if I'm looking at a plan G, which is a Medigap plan, Medicare dictates that all plan Gs need to look alike as far as benefit design. They don't say that the carriers have to have the exact same pricing. So when carriers are competing against each other on a marketplace, a benefit advisor such as Dennis, who's on the phone with us, he can inform the retiree that, well, this plan G is a better price than the competitor's plan G. And so what I mean by that is the benefit advisor is really honing into one, what plan makes most sense for the retiree based on all the data they give us. And then we're making sure those HRA dollars go farther by enrolling that retiree into the best price plan that's available to them in their market as well. So that is one advantage of a marketplace. One of the other advantages is that typically in a marketplace platform, such as via benefits, the HRA administration is embedded under that model. And what I mean by that is the retiree can enroll into a plan through a marketplace. Because we have carrier connectivity, we're getting files each month to say, yes, Dennis made his premium payment. We can take the state's allocation into the HRA arrangement and reimburse the retiree automatically because everything's connected under one roof in that example. And again, different from the other examples I've mentioned, carriers are competing side by side on a marketplace. This way you're giving your retirees more options to choose from rather than a single carrier or maybe perhaps a local broker. Okay, so does that help everyone sort of set the stage of what's available out there for individual Medicare plan enrollment?
Yep.
Okay, great. Moving on. Okay, so what I just described, this is a good visual. So if someone were to stop you in the hallway and to say, how does the individual Medicare marketplace work? This is how it would work. And let me just stop there too, because I know, Faith, we talked about some of the confusion around the word marketplace, individual marketplace. The word is interchangeable. A marketplace is simply a platform where carriers can bring their options to the fingertips of the retirees. So the marketplace is giving the retirees more options. The Medicare marketplace here is because we're talking about connecting those retirees to Medicare plans. So at the top here, the plan sponsor in this case would be the state. The state could provide their marketplace provider the HRA information along with the retiree eligibility files. So that all comes over on a file. It's ingested into the marketplace platform. And then the marketplace platform is then offering all these retirees connection points into various carriers. So again, I start to talk about some of the questions we ask. Who are your doctors? Do you travel? Do you need an open network, or are you okay with a Medicare Advantage or a Medicare supplement plan? In the purple down below, when the retiree selects the coverage and benefits, that's really the end game. They're going to enroll into either a Medicare supplement with a Part D. So a Medicare supplement pays after Medicare. It only covers you for your medical. So you would need to marry a Part D plan with that, or you can enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan, which is your medical and prescription all wrapped under one plan. There are other supplemental benefits such as hearing, vision, dental under these marketplace offerings. And then on either side of this slide, you'll see the benefit advisors offer benefit support to the carrier. They can be the middleman and help those retirees enroll into a plan. All of this is done with a voice signature. So these marketplace providers are not sending out paper applications. They are helping the retiree whittle down the best plan choice for them. And when the retiree is ready to enroll, we are doing that with a voice signature, which is then dispatched to our carrier partners for enrollment. Post-enrollment, there are advocates. So if you get an EOB in the mail, you can call your marketplace provider, and they, again, could be the middleman in helping you sift through any EOBs or information you get directly from your carrier. And then the right hand of the slide, we already talked about that. Typically under the marketplace platforms, HRA administration is embedded into the platform. And so again, those monies are being floated from the state, then reimbursed back to the retiree after an expense is incurred. And in this case, that would be all administered under one marketplace platform. Any questions on the marketplace model?
Don't see any hands up.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, and Dennis and Paula, feel free to jump in. They're really the crux of this model. Paula has done many retiree meetings with other entities such as yourselves, and I'll let Paula talk more about that, and Dennis can jump in too. But from a marketplace rollout perspective, everything we do under VIA Benefits is co-branded with our clients. So it would be an extension of how the state can deliver retiree medical. That would come with a client announcement. Education and enrollment could include co-branded print materials, in-person retiree meetings, ongoing support. There's several mailings that go out throughout the year. When it's Medicare open enrollment, we would let the retirees know that is coming as well. And HRA getting started kits, and then of course, post-enrollment advocacy. What I mean by that, retirees do have the option each year to reassess their plan choice. A good example of that I gave yesterday, my father is a Medicare recipient and his prescriptions changed. So he did call in and actually talk to Dennis and changed his prescriptions based on his needs. So that is what we mean by post-enrollment advocacy, reaching out to the retirees to let them know we are here ongoing for support and enrollment assistance. Paula or Dennis, anything else you'd like to add to what we do to touch the retirees and help them feel better about this transition?
Paula, you need to unmute. Or we can unmute you for you. Maybe we have to unmute you. Do we?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I know
You-
better than that. So
That's right.
I've been with this company for 14 years and I love what I do. The best part of this whole thing is when the retirees come to a live meeting. And when they do, it's a reunion for them. They haven't seen each other for a long time. So they love coming and we get great attendance at these meetings. But this is their first introduction to VIA benefits when they come. So when I'm doing meetings, it's so great to, of course, educate them, but it's also the time for them to voice how they feel. Some of them come in a little frustrated. Some of them are scared. Some of them are just confused. And so when they come to the meeting, they have all the time they need for questions and talking to us personally and meeting their friends. I'm sorry. Oh, I thought someone said something.
Nope.
Okay. And we feed them, of course, we have refreshments, but they spend that time. And when they leave, and I promise you, this is so amazing to watch. When they leave, they feel relieved. They feel like they know what they want now and that they're not so in the dark. And they feel like they've been able to vent a little bit to someone who's actually with VIA benefits. And I've got to tell you, I've got the best job in the company and I love what I do. So I just had to put a little plug in there for those retiree meetings. I've worked with Ohio PERS. I've worked with PEB. We work with them still. Of course, the state of Nevada is PEB. And we still do meetings for them every year, sometimes twice a year, even meetings on teaching people how to use their HRA. And so we have specific meetings for those. So it's very important for us, for these retirees to feel like there's someone there that understands what they're going through and that they can have that interaction when we do these meetings. So I think that's a lot of information for you, but I just had to plug that. It's a great opportunity for them.
Thank you, Paula. That is very important to make sure that there's additional handholding through a transition of this nature. So great. If we can go to the next slide. I think we're getting close to wrapping up our part. Okay, Dennis, I know you're on the phone. If I don't want to speak about what you do for a living, so you're best suited to explain to the team here your role with VIA benefits in the marketplace and maybe just talk about this slide. That'd be great. And maybe Dennis is on mute.
We're looking for Dennis.
Are you there, Dennis? Okay, well,
I've done Dennis's job. If you want me to speak about that.
Yeah, you did Dennis's job as well. You've done everything. Feel free.
I did. Not that you keep needing to hear from me, but it's such an opportunity for people when they call in that they feel comfortable with the advisor. And what we do is we actually walk through all the processes. Sorry, you can't hear. Okay. So when they call in, the first thing they want to do is ask you questions about what they can find. And when they call in, they could be a little frustrated again. They may need to vent a little bit, but these people that are on the phones with them are very well trained. Multiple background checks, like it says. We have to be, I'm looking at Dennis's notes here on the bottom. He can hear, but he can't, apparently you can't hear.
And Dennis, if you hit *6, I know we're trying to unmute you on our end and it's not letting us unmute you. Click that. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
That's all right. Dennis, you got Paula now, so you can blame her if she messes up. I don't know what Dennis will look like, but it's fine.
Yeah.
It's happy hour somewhere, but not here, but we'll make it happy. Go ahead.
I know Dennis really well. The thing the most important part for a benefit advisor or these licensed insurance agents that these people talk to, the most important part is to connect with that person that's on the phone. Listen to them, find out what their needs are, but understand that we as these people are licensed insurance agents. We've gone through a lot of tests. We're also taken care of we've had tests with the carrier. We've also done a lot of other understanding, what we call senior sensitivity or culture, client culture. And so we understand the background and they're going to ask us questions like, can you give me the same plan that I've had with the state? Can you match that? And of course we can. So we'll be able to compare side by side what they've had as their group plan and help them get a plan just like that, if that's what they want. But we'll also make sure they understand other plans that are out there that may help them better. Now, it says here salary plus a service metric. What that means is we are not commissioned. When we enroll someone in a plan, we don't get a commission. We're salaried. And so we are very unbiased and on the side of the retiree. And we want to make sure that we take care of them. If we don't, then we don't get a bonus. So there is a bonus, this metrics bonus, if they're well taken care of. Now, we are all located in the US, and I know that's important to people. They wonder when they call someone, where do these people live? Can they understand my background, what I'm going through, my culture? And yes, we're all based in the United States. And I love this part where it says the average age is 43. Obviously, you can tell that I'm not 43. I'm a lot older than that. And there are many people on these phones that are actually my age and sometimes older. And when people find that out, they love that because they know they understand from their own age group. Because all these people that call in, the average age is probably 68. I mean, sometimes 70. So it's important that they know that. So we're carrier certified, we're appointed, and we have, of course, each state licensed. So when they call in, they have a person that's licensed in that specific state. So these benefit advisors may be actually licensed in all 50 states. I know I was. So it's important for them to know that we're there to help them. We even have people say, can I talk to the same person whenever I call? And yes, they can. They can ask for the same person. So it's important for these people to know that we actually care about them and that we can even call the insurance company for them if they'd like us to. So they don't even have to worry about that part of it. So it's important for them to know that they can call and ask us as many questions as they want. We had a gentleman 1 year call 65 times before he made his decision on which plan he wanted, which is okay if they need that.
Thank you, Paula, for that. I think that's really the crux of a marketplace is the benefit advisors, who the retirees are talking to. I know in our case, the average phone call lasts about 63 minutes for a retiree. And oftentimes they want to talk about other things than insurance. The part Paula mentioned, the salary plus the service metric bonus, we have something that's called voice of the customer. And what that is, the way the advisor can get a bonus is we have a scale of 1 through 5, 5 being the best on the outcome of the call. And the retiree gets to survey us every time they talk to us. Anything below a 3, that retiree would get a call back out from our team to see that what could have been better. So that's really the service metric we were talking about. And everything we talked about today, marketplace platforms do come with robust reporting to the employer to say, yes, all of these retirees have been made contact with, they have enrolled into a plan. So if you were to move into this direction, that is an advantage of a marketplace, is having robust reporting with the employer throughout the transition. So thank you, Paula, for that.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions on marketplace features, the HRA? Because I know I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and we've taken a lot of your time on a Friday afternoon, so we appreciate everyone.
We have our insurance commissioner's hand went up, and again, this is, I know, been super high level. We have been asked for some very high level. So those listening in, we'll be giving more modeling direction. We'll finish some of that today and delve in. Mr. Commissioner.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So unfortunately, I've had some technical difficulties. I can hear some of the stuff that you're saying, and I've been cut off a couple times, not by any of our presenters, just I'm technologically challenged. But so I guess, forgive me if you said this, but would you contract with the state of Delaware? Is that how that works?
Yes, every client we work with, there would be a contract with the state, correct?
And do you understand that's thousands of potential people? I mean, you have the bandwidth, the number of advisors to accommodate the state?
Yes, that would be something we do. We've worked with the state of Ohio with 150,000 retirees that transition. I think Paula, Nevada had 80,000 retirees. So we, and I can only speak for VIA Benefits. I know there's other marketplace platforms. We are the pioneer in this space, going on our 17th year. And right now, 2.3 million retirees have used this platform. So yeah, that definitely we would have the bandwidth to take on the retiree population there.
Great. Just two other quick ones. Do you do this by appointment? How does the
That's a great question. Yep, it is by appointment. So what we have is, not to get too in the weeds, but since you asked, there is something what we call pre-enrollment. So anytime an employer, if they were to sunset their group plan, you have something called guarantee issue, which gives the retiree 90 days to go into the individual market and enroll into a plan. So if you're going to do this on a January 1st calendar year, that would be then October through the end of the year to enroll into a plan. But we have something called pre-enrollment, where we like to take the retiree's information, set up their profile, get used to us, get to know the benefit advisors. And then during that pre-enrollment conversation, we'll make an appointment with the retiree. And typically we do that because a lot of folks are busy, vacationing, doctor's appointments, that sort of thing. Other than that, sometimes retirees like to bring their adult children on the line with our benefit advisors. We can patch up actually up to 5 lines, and the appointments are very popular. So retirees can go ahead and sit down at their kitchen table and go ahead and make a very informed decision. And like Paula said, not always on the first phone call. Sometimes it takes a couple of times before they're ready to make that enrollment.
Last question is, what hours do you work? Are you available weekends and holidays and things like that when people are not, not busy with the rest of their life?
Right. Yes, it is. I think Paula, or the hours now, I think we're 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. And I know we do have Saturday appointments as well during the busy season.
That's correct.
So I know it's a bunch of questions, but
this is great.
I'm a big supporter of benefit advisors. I think they're wonderful. I think that your presentation, and Paula, you're in the right spot. You're doing the right thing, I can tell. I just
Thank you.
caution the retirees who are thinking about whether they want to sign up on their own, go through Medicare.gov or through an advisor. It's really important that folks know that if you mess up, meaning that if you type in Medicare.net or Medicare.com, it's going to send you to a nefarious site typically.
Yep.
And then you're going to be signing up for something that may or may not be what you think you're signing up for. So we always tell people to be very cautious, but that's why the benefit of having a benefit advisor is so important. So thank you. No more questions.
And we'll go to Jeff. And again, this was very high level, something I know DHR wanted to have shared with us. And understanding that for the future, obviously, these kinds of details as you get into, Commissioner, numbers, cost, ability, those things come, later in the contractual area, but it's good to know what other states have available. Jeff Tashner.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Allison, I just want to ask a couple questions because in some prior meetings, there were questions about VIA benefits and its role, and I want to make sure that I understand. What I think I heard from you in your presentation and in response to the insurance commissioner's question is that you help connect retirees with carriers or providers, but VIA benefits itself is not a carrier or provider. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
And is there any connection between VIA benefits and any of the carriers, providers, or you are entirely independent of them?
We are entirely independent of the carriers that are on our marketplace in the individual offering.
And does VIA in any way provide coverage at all, or is it just in the advisor capacity?
It's only in the advisor capacity. So that's why it's so important for those advisors like Paula and Dennis to be licensed, to be able to even talk about the carriers. And like Paula said, we have to be appointed with each carrier that is on our marketplace. And the reason that's so important is because you don't want the advisor to give the retiree half of the options available. They are only allowed to talk about the carriers that they're licensed in the states and appointed by those carriers to actually have those conversations. So that's an important feature, and everything is governed by CMS, which is the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Thank you for answering the questions. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear and fully understood your role in the process and the degree to which you were or were not independent. So thank you for answering those questions.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you again. And I want to just reiterate, this is meant to be very high level because the details of getting into the weeds and the programs and all that is not our decision here, but I think it was something that you all wanted us to be aware of, that these advisors and folks are available, whether or not we go have a future plan for future hired or future retirees to have Medic Fill or HRAs, that this is a tool that could be available for our retirees.
Absolutely.
Great, because I know we have some antsy numbers people who are wanting to get to Joanne and Marlene, and we've been here almost 45 minutes, and when are we gonna get to numbers? So for all the number of people, we are gonna get there, we're gonna have several meetings to get into numbers, because I think today we only got into a little bit, and we have still other models. I know Representative Bombeck had shared some things, and I know we'll get into the HRAs in the future, so thank you all for listening in, and thank you for sharing, Allison and Paula, very much.
Sure.
All right, so continue along there, Faith.
All right, so Chris, I think, I don't know if you want to take just a minute, maybe go quickly through these last few remaining slides, and then we can jump to what everyone is anxiously awaiting.
I'm getting the
discussion
sense,
on.
the professor in me feels the tension of, when are we gonna get to numbers and models? All right. All right,
Yeah, yeah, Faith, in the interest of time, why don't we skip 9 and just go straight to slide 10? I know this has come up before, and this is an older illustration. So this is from 2021. We presented this to the Retiree Benefit Study Committee, really to just illustrate sort of the life of the retiree in the marketplace and the HRA. So this illustration looks at a 65-year-old in the marketplace. The blue bars here are showing premium cost for Plan G plus the prescription drug coverage. So again, a richer type plan design available in the marketplace. The orange bars are your out-of-pocket costs, and then the gray bars are your unused HRA balances. So again, if moving to the marketplace, the state would provide funds available to pay for both premium costs as well as out-of-pocket costs. And in the earlier years of retirement, your out-of-pocket costs will likely be a little bit lower than they will in later years. So the key to the illustration here, those unused HRA dollars do roll over so that, when your healthcare expenses do start to grow later on in life, you have this buildup of those funds available to help you pay for those out-of-pocket costs in the future. Again, this is illustrating a Plan G, so that's a richer type of Medicare supplement plan. The role of the benefit advisors for this 65-year-old would be to understand, are we better off enrolled in the Plan G, or maybe perhaps a less rich plan with a lower premium cost would be better. That would allow that retiree to roll over more of those HRA dollars than is illustrated here. So that's how the role of the benefit advisor really plays into the choice that goes into what a retiree will enroll in. This is based on a $5,100 HRA. Again, that's something we would reevaluate if the state were to move in this direction. And there's also other ways to sort of stagger the HRA so that it could vary by age. We could provide higher HRA dollars to older retirees, similar to the Rhode Island model. So this is looking at a flat HRA of $5,100 that grows over time. But again, it would be up to the state's discretion how you would want to use those funds to best provide benefits for your retirees. I see Representative Bombach has a question. Maybe I'll go to you.
Great, thank you, and I'm sorry for the background noise. This shows that the HRA works best when somebody is starting at age 65, and that it really this kind of life cycle would work poorly if somebody was starting in this plan with an HRA at a later age, say 70 or later. I wanted to confirm that, and I also wanted to confirm that this shows with these assumptions. Well, actually, a question is. This is assuming maybe a 2% annual increase in the annual deposit amount. Obviously, health costs increase with the age of the retiree, but also the rate of medical cost inflation is typically well above 2%. Is that differential in this projection? And then the last thing, and then I'll go on mute. You don't have to worry about the background noise. This shows that for somebody who lives beyond the average age, beyond 85, is likely going to be increasingly out of pocket in their last years. That would not be the case if they had something like Medic-Fill during their last years. Is that accurate?
So I think you hit on some good points, and I'll start, and Allison, feel free to chime in. I think this is one illustrative example. I think the key for, say, someone starting with the HRA at age 80 is, the benefit advisor component. What is the right plan for that retiree? It's probably not going to be the same as what the best option is available for a 65-year-old. Separately, again, this does just assume everyone's getting a flat $5,100 today. That would grow with the 2% over time. Again, there are ways up to the state's discretion on how you would want to pay out that $5,100. You could give more money to older retirees and less money to younger retirees when they would need it a little bit less. So there is some flexibility in how the program would be arranged. To your point, though, you know, as you get older, healthcare expenses do grow. So there is a little bit more of a need to manage the older populations and the sicker populations. But again, that's something that could be decided in the design of the program and ultimately how you structure the HRA. I don't know if anyone else would have anything to add to that.
And we'll have the opportunity later today, if we want, as we asked Joanne and others and you to do some modeling, because we did not intentionally have that with the HRA, and whether we do that, because we're running a little late, the June 5th meeting or even the meeting after that. And I'm not sure if you answered the representative's last question, because you also talked about, you know, the offset. And I know Mr. Craig had mentioned this before too, you know, whether you put additional funds or have, like you said, the backfill, medic fill plan. I don't know if you heard Representative Wildbox have a question or not.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I
Wayne,
have a question for Chris, if I may.
go ahead.
Chris, I'm thinking ahead, and I'm thinking of a person who's working now and might be retiring 15 years from now at age 65. So in other words, today that person is 50 years old. Assuming that we were to adopt this, can I use this graph and say, well, that would be like, I would be at like line 80, so that person would never accumulate a surplus that will almost instantly go to some out-of-pocket cost. Can I use the graph that much, or is that too much of a stretch on the data that's there?
I think it's a good question. I think that would be a stretch. I think if we were to set a $5,100 HRA today, we are not saying that that would be the right amount to give to retirees 15 or 20 years from now either. I think, you know, there would be an opportunity for the state to continuously reevaluate, are we providing retirees with the right amount of funds to make sure they are better off in retirement under this model. So we would not be locked into providing a 50-year-old today the equivalent of $5,100 in 15 years. I think it's something that would be reevaluated periodically. This isn't a model where we want to, you know, give retirees something and then forget about them. I think it's still a benefit and would be treated as such. And, you know, we'd have the flexibility and the opportunity to continue to evaluate that over time.
Okay, but if I'm looking at this in a worst case scenario, which is that the legislature ultimately would decide, no, we can't do anything more than the 2% increase per year, then the 80 line would be where that person would be. That would be pretty much their situation if they retired 15 years from now.
Well, so one of the keys to this graph is Medicare supplement premiums vary by age. So the 80-year-old, the premium cost there is what an 80-year-old would spend, not a 65-year-old. So you could infer a little bit from this, but in 15 years, a 65-year-old is still going to pay a lower premium than an 80-year-old would. They'll have lower out-of-pocket costs. So generally speaking, $5,100 in an HRA amount is going to be more than, you know, most retirees would need to use in any given year, and then that's where the HRA rollover would factor in.
So Plan G premiums are age dependent.
That's right. Age dependent, geographically dependent. So it could cost you more if you live in, say, Philadelphia than it would if you live in Newcastle, for example.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And good questions, Wayne, and we'll be able to get into some of those, you know, real specifics that we would like. You know, because at the end of the day, we're making recommendations for the OPEB. You know, our legislators, co-chairs are working on language around the 1%. And our goal is to come up with some good models so that we can clearly see, is it something we want to consider? So we could continue probably into the next slides. Right?
So Chris, if you don't mind, I think in the interest of time, we'll kind of slide over this, I think we touched on it a little bit. And we'll get right to the heart of the matter. And I thank you, Chris, Allison, Paula, Dennis, again, for the information today. And I just want to ask subcommittee members, please, if you haven't already done so, take some time to look at some of those questions at the back of the deck. We're happy to take additional questions. You can submit those directly to me, and I can work with Allison and the team to try to get you some specific answers on any questions that aren't there.
And we'll try to get things up online. I know we don't have Carol Mick here, but for those who are asking before about some of the things that we tape in our meetings for the retirees that have friends and family who aren't able to attend today, we'll try to get this up. So the slide that we did skip over, we can still come back later with the HRA because that's kind of the direction for the next meeting. So take it away with the beginning of eligibility options. I do know that some suggestions came in. Representative Bombach had a couple more for later that we can look at for some additional modeling.
Okay, great.
In case he can't hear.
Great.
All right.
But perhaps we start with Joanna. Are you comfortable with perhaps walking us through the slide? I think we may have a couple of adjustments that we might need to call out as we go through this. And again, I just want to thank the subcommittee members. Chiron was running models at 10 o'clock last night, so this is hot off the press. There's still some adjustments we think we're going to have to make. Joanna will account for those as she talks.
Thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Joanna Adams. I'm the pension administrator for the state of Delaware. So I work very closely with Chiron, who is our actuary, and they have been an integral part of the OPEB liability and calculations, et cetera. So based on our direction from the last meeting, we've modeled out the 1% funding. And then the next step is to look at our eligibility options, run a few models, come out with the impact to the liability and what that would do to our funding status. And again, today what we're presenting is independent of the 1%. So what we really wanted to do is we want to focus on the funding percentage. We've got that model. Now we're doing the eligibility percentage. We have that model, and then we can do other models all independently. And then after we have kind of our general consensus of what we're looking at, we'll combine all of those into one final model and see the total impact with all of the different parts of it. So before I get into the detail, I do want to thank Margaret Timken, who is the Chiron actuary that's working on OPEB liability. What I found out recently is her daughter just graduated from college last week out of state. So she's been traveling while also trying to get us the information that we need. So we do have a couple corrections, which I'll call out in the presentation. So again, running these models, I think looks easy to us. But when you're the actuary actually running the models, we're learning that it takes hours to run this. And so given the fact that she had limited availability and we're rushing, we needed everything yesterday and sooner. I do want to thank her and just ask for the committee's grace a little bit as we go through this.
And we'll be having more time too, and open enrollment will be occurring for DHR, so we'll have a little bit of time. All right.
Okay, so looking at the first item is reduce spousal state share subsidy to 50%. So we looked at two different options. One refers to employees hired on or after January 1 of 2015. So this does not apply to them as an active employee in this model, only as a retiree. And if you are a current employee who was hired on or after January 1 of 2015, and at retirement, if you choose to enroll your spouse in their healthcare coverage, you would have to pay 50% of the state share for that. So what that does is it reduces the OPEB liability by $1.8 billion. And again, this is over a 30-year period, right? It's not like an instantaneous reduction of 1.8 billion. This is over a 30-year period. So then that would help the funding status get to basically roughly 19%. And again, this is standalone. This is only if you did this. This is the total impact. If you're looking at specifically for retirees, regardless of your date of hire, new retirees or all retirees on or after 1/1/2025, the impact is a little bit greater. So the OPEB reduction, the OPEB liability reduction would result in $2.8 billion, so almost a $1 billion increase. And therefore it increases the funding status accordingly, so roughly 19.5%. So both options are really, even though it's $1 billion difference, the long-term impact on the funding status is almost relatively the same. So any questions about the spousal subsidy before I move to the next?
And some people may just be digesting this. Michael Bagato. You need to unmute, or we need to unmute him, one or the other.
Oh, I think I got it now. Okay. Too many things all at once. My question is Model B on the subsidy for what's a new retiree on 1/1/25. Can you explain what a new retiree is?
So,
If
sure. Joanna Adams retires January 1, 2025. If I choose to enroll my spouse, and I mean all the spousal coordination benefits, et cetera, then I'm gonna pay a greater share for me as a retiree to cover my spouse than I would as an active employee.
but that's my higher date is 1/1/25, not my vested date of when I'm eligible of 1/1/25, correct?
So this would apply regardless of your date or higher, this would apply to any retiree as of 1/1/2025 who retires
So someone
January 1, 2025 and beyond.
someone that had 10 years or more, anyone before that, I just don't
That's correct.
understand.
That's correct. So again, using myself, I have 26.5 years of service. If I were to retire, say, January 1 of 2026, based on this model, I would then have to pay 50% more to cover my spouse.
Okay, so it's future retirees, not future new hires.
That is correct.
Okay, and if we were, so that number would be lower if it was all new hires after 2025. I think that is the part. So we are then, you're looking at two different things. To your point, Mr. Pagano. Model A are employees hired on or after 2015. And instead of it being hires on or after 2025, this is retirees. Did we do the modeling of the hire of 2025, or would that be so inconsequential? What would that number be?
We did not, but just looking at the data, I would say the max, and again, I'm not an actuary, I'm a logical numbers person.
Yeah.
I would say the impact is probably $1 billion or less.
So $1 billion.
Total impact. So it's obviously gonna be much less than the employees hired on or after 2015.
Right.
Yeah, I think, sorry. I think that if you said new hires after 1/1/2025, it has no immediate impact on the OPEB obligation because the current OPEB obligation is only based on people who work for us right now. It would impact the future projected obligation 20 or 30 years from now, because when we do that, when you do that calculation, you do take into account some actuarial assumptions about new hires. Is that correct, Margaret?
Yes, that's correct. And Joanna, you're about right. It is about a $1 billion reduction in liability and it's around 18% funded at the 52.
So if you had that number, because I have a feeling knowing Mr. Bragato, Mr. Obrey, and others who represent retirees, in our collective bargaining units, just saying it straight out. I'm sure they probably prefer the new hires. Mr. Bragato?
Yeah, again, but the next one, increase the state share based on years of service. That's for employers hired 1/1/25. Why did we choose only the retirees as of 1/1/25 and didn't do that equation for new hires on 1/1/25?
So that's
because you are correct. I have a number of employees who were hired with and told specific details, just like the retirees are arguing now that they came to work with the understanding when they retired, they would receive a certain benefit. Those same employees that we hired, we gave hiring bonuses to, we gave incentive pay to, now we're going to make them pay it on the back end, okay, because they're now going to get a less of a benefit that they were told when they came to work for the state of Delaware.
Well,
And
what
I
I'm
have-
hearing is you would like, because we're not done with this, we're beginning, this is the beginning of our little journey. Is to make sure that, to look at the model, and I know Margaret gave us a guesstimate, but perhaps that we look at the model, what that would be, both percent and number, for employees hired on or after 1/1/2025 for the reduction in spousal share. So we can
Correct.
add that to the next time we come in. Sorry, we're gonna make you all cross-eyed, but we appreciate it because we want to put forth that plan. Thank you, Mr. Brigado. I got a similar text from Mr. Overly, who is not able to speak, but is able to text. Okay,
Thank you.
Jeff? Yes, Jeff?
Yeah, and Margaret, I just want to confirm the numbers you said. I thought I heard it. It's about a $1 billion reduction and 18% funding. Was that what you shared with us?
Oh,
Yeah,
Margaret.
Joanna had guessed it about right, and it's about 18.5%.
All right. And then I just want to make sure.
She got another career. Do you need an actuarial? She's coming over.
Don't cause Joanna to leave, please.
No, we don't want her to leave. She's our pension point.
And I just want to make sure that I understand the 18.5% based on the last meeting. We're currently, if I remember, at about 6% funded. This change, independent by itself, would move us from 6% to 18.5% as of 2052. Am I right on that?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so moving on to your next one.
Joanna,
Oh, yes.
this is Margaret. This is at the end of 2052. This is also with the 0.36% appropriation from the state. At the end of 2052, if nothing has changed and you still have the appropriation, you would be 17.81% funded. So these are all at 2052, okay?
Thank you. Representative Bombach, your hand went up.
Yes, thank you. First a question and then a comment. I heard Secretary Geisberger say that I'll say the scary number is 8.35 billion is purely for current retirees and current employees and not new hires that haven't been hired yet. If that's the case, I think the second row, the second category on this page shows there being a saving for option B that only applies when people are hired after 2025. That seems at odds with what I thought I heard Secretary Geisenberger say. Can you help me understand that better, please?
Yes, you're actually moving too fast for me. The second section is where we have a huge correction.
That is perfect. Then I just want to just throw my comment out there. I really appreciate having the two options there. I understand that in a sense there's three options we may want. One is for new hires after 25, people who were hired in 2015 or later, and then in some cases, those who retire after a certain date. I really love that breakdown. Obviously, we need to narrow things. I think that's a really logical breakdown. So thank you so much.
Of course. So moving on.
All right, so increase the graduated state share based on years of service. We currently have that in place now for hires as of 1/1/2007. So this would be a whole nother tier. And we've done two models. One for employees hired on or after 1/1/2015. So what you see before you on the slide is absolutely incorrect for model A. That number should be $3.8 billion. So not 14, 3.8 billion, which would then take the funding status to 20.24% or 20.2%, depending on how many decimals.
So everybody got that? 3.8 and 20.20. Might be 20.2. All right.
Yes. And then as you can see, with model B, employees hired on are after January 1 of 25. So again, these are new hires that are going to be hired in the future. Everybody else stays the same. The savings is the liability reduction is $3 billion. So obviously you're going to save more by applying this to those that were hired roughly 10 years ago or almost 10 years ago than as if you offer it to new hires. So $3.3 billion with a funding status after 30 years of 19.7%.
And then obviously with years of service, years of retirement, very different, because we got into that also with the safety officers,
Correct.
the law enforcement for protection, all those things will have to be considered.
That is correct. So yeah, if you're looking at it strictly from a financial perspective, there's a greater benefit in applying this to those hired on or after January 1, 2015, but realizing that might not be the most popular decision, you can still gain a $3 billion OPEB liability reduction by offering it to new hires.
And we have two hands that went up. We'll go to David Craig and then we'll go to secretaries. Dave?
Thank you. So just to clarify, so Joanna, if we were to go with this, we would make some exception for the police because 30 years is not their full retirement.
That's certainly a consideration for the committee, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
And Secretary Eisenberg.
Then a question for Margaret, and I think I know the answer but these liability reductions are not against the current 8.3 or the $8.9 billion liability, 8.3 of which is unfunded. I believe these calculations are against the future projected liability, which is going to grow to $26 billion, right?
Right.
I would assume it has to be because you're talking about employees hired on or after 1/1/2025, and they're not even in the $8.3 billion unfunded liability. They're only in that $25 billion liability out in the future. So I think people looking at these numbers need to understand you're not looking at a reduction against the current liability. You're looking at the reduction over a 30-year period against what is going to be a much, much, much bigger unfunded liability without other changes.
That is correct, Rick. Maybe the title should say 2052 approximate OPEB liability reduction.
Right. Now for each of these that's about hired on or after 1/1/2025, I assume that Chiron could calculate what the immediate reduction would be against the current liability. They obviously can't do that for Model B because Model B isn't in the current liability. Is that correct?
That's correct. Also, because of the effective dates are 1/1/2025, so it's kind of also pushed out too. So it's better to use the 2052 date as comparison.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to call him Professor Geisenberger. You have a way of putting a mood on the classroom. Thank you very much for that. Joanna, I can do that as a professor. I can make fun of myself. All right, go ahead.
Okay, any questions from the graduated state, any other questions from the graduated state share before we talk about the future vesteds? Okay, so moving on to eliminate future vested retirees from eligibility for healthcare. So currently there's about 4,000 employees who previously worked for the state, but when they left state government, they were not immediately eligible to collect their pension. They had worked long enough to be vested, meaning they're eligible for a pension in the future. So like the month after their 62nd birthday, for example. So what we've done, we have two models again. Model A is for those employees who leave state employment on or after January 1 of 2025, do not immediately draw a pension. They would then lose the ability to enroll in healthcare with a state subsidy at the time that they're then eligible to collect a pension. So again, these are not these, all current people who have left the state, they would not be impacted. This is only for those that leave the state on or after January 1, 2025, and cannot immediately collect a pension. So that would reduce the OPEB liability reduction by $1.5 billion. And again, impact the funding to roughly 18 to 19% in 30 years. There's a greater savings by looking at Model B, and these are people who have left state service prior to 1/1/25, but have not yet begun collecting a pension. So those people were to be impacted, which I said right now is roughly 4,000 employees. It would reduce the OPEB liability by $1.8 billion. And again, it's almost 19% funding status. So again, you're not impacting anybody who's currently working for the state with Model A, unless they choose to leave prior to collecting a pension. And I know this one always seems to confuse people about what does a future vested mean. So again, these are people that may have worked for the state, say roughly 10 years or 15 years, but they did not earn enough years of service and they were not age eligible to collect immediately upon them leaving state government.
Right, and then it gets into policy questions, politics questions, right?
Correct.
Elected officials, judges, others, so.
Yes.
All of
And
those factors.
this is Margaret again, just to be clear, that Model B includes those future active employees that do terminate after 2025 and are not immediately drawing a pension as well. So the 1.8 includes part of that 1.5 billion.
Thank you, Margaret. And what we see in government now is we do have more of a tendency for people to work maybe 10, 15 years for the state, but don't necessarily retire from the state. Especially as, you know, we're in a hiring, we're facing hiring challenges, we're facing wage challenges, et cetera. There's more state employees leaving state government, probably now more so than ever. So I think this is a category that may not have an immediate impact or may not have a large impact overall, positive or negative, but I think we'll see the potential for this area to grow in the future.
Okay. All right, so we know this is a lot for a Friday afternoon. And a lot of info, and I know we have other models and questions. I know Representative Bombach had shared a couple of things. I don't know if we had emailed, if you can speak.
I had my hand up.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna
Secretary
put on my-
Eisenberger, I will not call you professor.
I do want to put on my professor hat one more time.
Oh God, here we go. Let me strap
I know the
in,
answers to
buckle up.
I think I know the answers to the questions, but if a person is eligible for early retirement and chooses that and takes a pension, an early pension, or if a person gets a disability pension, then this would not apply to them, correct? This is only the person who starts at age 18, say, and at age 33 says, I'm done, leaves until they're 62 years old, I guess, is when they could draw.
That is correct, depending on their date of hire, but yes,
Right.
in essence, that's
So
correct.
They then leave for state government employment for 30 years and come back at the age of 62 and say, okay, now pay my 50% state share. That's who this would apply. That's who this would hit essentially, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think to your point, this is a combination of savings and maybe a retention policy as well, in terms of trying to retain people to stay with us as long as possible so that they can actually get these benefits, at the time that they're drawing their pension as opposed to later. So, or, as opposed to being, having incentives, frankly, to leave.
Right, and so so you're saying we'll keep there's certain things on the table, until we get to the point where we want to send our final recommendation. So, I think modeling is great to have those data points, and so we can keep those, on the table. Because we're not making the recommendations, thank goodness, today. Because we have a lot more to learn, or some of us do. I should speak for myself, I guess, right? Any other questions for Joanne? Thank you so much. I know that was a lot.
Of course.
I'm glad to know the experts can make numbers mistakes as well occasionally.
Oh, yeah,
That helps
it's easy
those of
to,
us who can be challenged there sometimes. But we will get there. So moving on, do we want to go on? Because I know we have a couple more recommendations for the medic fill from Representative Bombach. Paul, are you able to talk now? Or if not, we have some things that we're writing for you. He's gonna let me do it. Representative Bombach.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
So the one question I had is, I heard Secretary Geisenberger say that the OPEB liability and or the underfunded one, and I keep thinking that 8.35 billion, is unaffected by changes we make. So I should say the calculation of the shortfall as of 2052 or whatever of 8.35 would be unaffected by any eligibility changes we make that apply only to new hires. And if that's correct, I was confused I thought it was the second category on that table that seems to show a percentage reduction or increase in the funding of that OPEB if we took something that didn't apply except for people hired after 1/1/25. So could that be explained? And I'm sorry if it was and I missed it.
Sure. This is Margaret again. So to project out the liability to 2052, we have to make assumptions on what the new hires would receive as benefits. So that's projecting the liability out, added in new hires as they come in, and as the actives retire, those go out. So we're trying to keep a stable population as we go out to 2052. Does that help?
So I guess obviously OPEB is after post-employment. So it may be that during that 30-year window, it is not beneficial, but certainly beyond that 30-year window, it's one that would be beneficial to the overall system, I'll say, and the state would be in a better position for eligibility changes we make, even if they don't apply for people that are hired before 1/1/25. Is that correct?
That is generally a correct statement, yes. If you're applying changes that are a little bit more, so to quote, restrictive to the unborn, yes, the liability in the future years will be lower and lower than expected.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then Representative, is this a good time for him to mention his suggestion for possible future study or go on? What do you want to do?
No, I mean, I think if the subcommittee members do not have additional questions about what Joanna
Yeah.
and Margaret just walked us through, I think we certainly can open the floor up to where do we go from here? What additional
Models, because we know it's some with the HRA and others. So Representative, did you want to bring anything up? I know you listened
Sure.
into the SEBC meeting, you said, okay, go ahead.
That's great. So, I think it'd be really helpful to, among other things, have all four of the eligibility factors in there. Only 3 are listed on that slide 12. So I'd like to see that. I think it's the age 55, 60. I think that's the one to be added back, just so we've got the numbers out there for the same kind of option, A and B, and perhaps even a C. So I think of A and B as higher date after 1/1/25, higher date after 1/1/15, and then C is retirement date after whatever the standard one you're choosing, maybe 1/1/25. So I'd like to see all 3 of those options for the 4. The one thing we haven't talked about is the payroll tax that's at 0.36%. I had an interesting conversation with Secretary Geisenberger earlier this week on that. And I'm going to do my silly mental math thing here. The way that our medic bill currently works is it pays roughly 20% with Medicare paying 80%. Medicare is able to pay that 80% because it collects 2.9% a year payroll tax, combination of employee-employer during all the working years. We're only receiving 0.36%. And we're paying a quarter as much as the feds. I think I think our payroll tax should be at least a quarter as much as total Medicare is. And that comes out to be somewhere around 0.75%. So I think that we should model a payroll tax above the current 0.36% and maybe in the 0.75% to 1%, but I leave it up to, subcommittee may have other ideas as far as if it's a completely goofy idea or if there are other set points that would be good modeling. That's probably all for now. Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, it's always nice to have recommendations. Some will fall in the purview of this committee and some obviously fall out, and payroll tax is kind of teetering. Joanne, do you want to?
Well, yeah, obviously that becomes a challenge for OMB and their budget team.
Right. I know Saran is listening in here this afternoon. Now, Representative Bombach, did you want to bring up that fourth model, or have your thoughts changed after listening today? Because I know the other day we didn't take a vote on the fourth, like we just said yes or no. We had kind of a consensus on the age at 60 plus. Did you want to bring that up, or have you had to change your thought?
I think that I don't think the subcommittee has ever said take that out. So until and unless that happens, I think it should be in there. So I'd like to see, I think my comment at the May 8th meeting was, I don't want to see options go until we've actually committed to some options, to yes on some options. So until that point, I'd like to see all the options. So I'd like to see that fourth element in there and modeled at 3 different assumption levels as far as effective dates and populations it applies to. But I don't think that should require action because it's been what we've been talking about up until I think this slide today. So I don't think.
So you're saying the retiree benefits with age, so meaning, begin until the recipient 60 plus for those hired after 115 and 125. Right.
55 for law enforcement.
Right, right. I mean, and certainly we can model anything, like you said, it's not as if we're making recommendations. I just know we had heard a lot of the members last time, and I think that's why the team hadn't modeled. And I don't know if you had to slip on or off at that time in the last meeting, but there was concern, I know, particularly those from the collective bargaining unit and the safety officer side with the age. But I mean, again, we're here to have answers to questions. So do people have strong feelings again with that? Go ahead.
Can I add one more thing? On Monday meeting of the SEBC, they presented the results of the survey of current employees. And this was, I thought it was one of the factors that modeled as, I'll say, least unpopular, and yet came with a big impact. So I think as a money guy, I don't want to have it rolled out of hand. So that's another reason I'd like to see that fourth element added in, unless we as a subcommittee vote and say, let's get it out of there.
Can I ask for those of us who aren't on the SEBC, I don't know if Faith Rents can just review what
Faith can, or Secretary DeMatteis is here. While they're looking at that,
what that survey said on that subject.
Yeah, Jeff Tashner, do you want to say anything while they're looking for that?
Yeah, Lieutenant Governor, I just want to make sure too. My understanding is the prior conversation we had around the marketplace, and we were talking about the possibility of an HRA, that if we make any change from our current medic fill into a different way of providing health care for retirees, that will also impact our long-term liability. I know when the decision was made to go to Medicare Advantage, the RBSC was told that along with the 1% carve out combined to get us to a certain level. So I hope at some point we're going to get similar information on the projected savings and the impact on the OPEB liability of that third prong, so that when we look at this holistically, right, how we fund it, what kind of design changes we may make, and eligibility, that we're taking them into consideration. My concern right now is we're getting information on funding, we're getting information on eligibility changes, but we're not talking about the second or whatever group or possibility, which is a design change. And my recollection from the RBSC work was that sort of thing can have a greater impact on long-term liability then eligibility changes. And I think we need to look at all of that. And I just want to make sure that that is still on the table
It
or
is.
in the works.
It is, and I want to point to Joanne. There's so many more points here. Go ahead, Joanne.
So yes, Jeff, you're absolutely correct. We have not forgotten about that. I think the strategy or the process we've been using is Margaret is one person and we don't want to send her into early retirement either. So we're taking one meeting to focus on funding, and then this particular meeting on the eligibility options. The next meeting will be more of the HRA.
And Joanne, I appreciate and understand it. I just get it. I get a little concerned when we're spending all this time around eligibility that some people are starting to make decisions in their
Right.
own minds when we
Yeah.
do not have all the information
Yes,
to make
absolutely.
one intelligent, knowledgeable, informed decision for the overall solution. And that's why I asked the question, because I wanted to slow down some people that may be focusing in on some of these things. There's another big part of the picture out there that we need to get so that we can make a fully informed decision.
right.
That is absolutely correct. And then in the end, when we have our 3 different areas that we've modeled independently, we'll look at which models do we want to combine and then have one big total financial picture.
Right, or different
Right. Thank you. I
recommendations.
appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And that's the hard part about, being in a forum where we absolutely want to be open and transparent and have everything. It's not quite the same when you could be in the side room crunching numbers, having conversations, because we're having to have every meeting public, which is good. But it does seem to be painful. It's almost like watching paint dry. And I'm sure for those crunching the numbers. So we do have to do what you're saying. And so the design is hugely important. And I know the secretary always reminds us, beyond just even the codification of the percent, the eligibility, the plan, the design. Secretary Eisenberg is always saying that you have to consider that. So while she's pulled up information, they're getting information for the SEBC. Secretary Eisenberg, do you want to add something? Then we'll go back to the question.
I just wanted to make sure we're going to get back to that. What was discussed at the SEBC?
Okay, Secretary DeMatteis has her hand up then. All right, Secretary DeMatteis.
I just wanted to respond to Jeff. I couldn't agree with you more, Jeff, in terms of making sure we look at this holistically, which is why I was concerned when, without any notification on the agenda, we took a vote last month on one piece of this. Because I'm afraid that if we just take this piece by piece and not holistically for each category, that at the end of the day, we won't accomplish what we're setting out to do. So that's exactly what, Jeff, my concern last week with voting on the minimum 1% in a vacuum with not voting on recommending the other pieces. My concern was, I think we have to do it all together and not piece by piece.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We appreciate that very much. And I don't know, my legislative colleagues are not here. I think they were looking for something for them for their legislation, but I concur. As we go forward, we have to look at the big package. So, and as we go forward, we have around 20 minutes left on your Friday afternoon. I know we're not going to get everything obviously accomplished. I am able to stay a little later to make sure anyone from the public needs to give comments. We always value the public. So why don't we proceed? The last conversation was asking the questions with the SEBC for Representative Bombach. Do you want to say anything now?
Yes, I would like to, if I may, respond to Secretary Eisenberger's question with regards to the employee benefits survey. Those results were reviewed with the State Employee Benefits Committee this past Monday at their meeting. That information is posted on the SEBC website. But specific to questions in the survey related to future changes in retiree healthcare. The survey included a ranking question to employees on how they would rank the 4 eligibility options that are being discussed by the subcommittee. They ranked their first or most preferred option, if any of those were to be implemented. Their most preferred, coming in at 32%, was requiring employees to reach the age of 60 before starting to receive retiree healthcare benefits subsidized by the state. So I think that is what Representative Bombach is referring to, in that perhaps based on that feedback from our employees, that if faced with those 4 options, that's the one they seem to prefer over the other 3, that perhaps this group would want to look further at what that would look like in terms of modeling.
Elevating the age of retirement. And we know then that you'd have to carve out the issues with the safety officers, with law enforcement, and correction officers, et cetera. So that is before us in the discussion. I know at the last meeting we can always have things modeled, doesn't mean we're gonna recommend it. You know, thoughts? Anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just validates that we ought to model it. And again, you know, all the discussions are consistent with what the lieutenant governor said. There needs to be a recognition that there are obviously certain people who, from an, you know, based on the type of work they're doing in particular, but you know, but also their existing, you know, employee contracts, or, you know, their contracts, and, you know, contemplate them retiring at 55 or maybe even earlier than 55. You know, but you know, it makes sense to me that, and again, that none of this affects, as I've said in previous things, when someone can draw a pension. It's a question of when the state pays a share of your healthcare, and it doesn't even affect the ability to purchase healthcare. It's just a question of what your state share would be. So, or what your retiree share would be, and until such time as you know, as you reach that age. So,
Wayne, did you unmute for a reason?
I did.
Okay.
Could I suggest that I'm sure we're going to be seeing these types of pages again, that we include in those, even if we're not talking about them at the meeting, the funding, the 1%, 2%, and 3% funding projections that we had looked at the last meeting. I've been flipping back and forth between my paper pages and my iPad here to see both of them. I think that would reinforce Jeff's notion of looking at this holistically, which I totally agree with. And secondly, in terms of the HRA, we've been thinking all along here about the notion of a 2% increase each year. And I think that number, that 2%, needs to be looked at in relationship to a historical look at the increases in cost of Plan G. And so if we could get that data, perhaps 10 or 15 years worth of data on the premium cost increases for Plan G.
So let me ask this, so you're moving ahead, I mean, we kind of had not really a motion, but kind of a partial motion by Representative Bombach talking about exploring the age category. Secretary Geisinger gave feedback, you know, look at one model, we'll look at them, doesn't mean we're gonna recommend that. I know there were strong feelings absolutely around safety officers, nurses, and some others at the last meeting that came up around that. You, Wayne, just went into the HRA, which we are gonna ask them to do some modeling. So why don't I do this? Am I getting a sense that you folks are okay with them modeling some of the change in retirement, recognizing that there wasn't full consensus, or do you want me to call a vote? I mean, I could do it either way.
I'll second that if you need a motion.
To call the vote, Representative Bombach, you have your hand up.
Yes.
I
I mean, my sense is that procedurally, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't asked for the 55-60 to be taken off. We've had discussion, but we've not had a consensus identified to take it off. I think that the only action could be considered is to ask to have it taken off. I think the default is it's in until we decide we don't. I don't think my request is to have it added, but rather to have it retained. Which shouldn't require action. That should be the default.
No, we didn't vote on it. No, we didn't vote on it. We just kind of had like a little consensus at the meeting. Okay, so are you making a motion that we vote whether to keep that in?
No, because
I don't think it needs to be a motion. I just think it needs to be reflected in the minutes.
Okay.
I mean, I think it has to be in. I think it has to be in unless there is action to take it out.
All right. Well, you know, we can model it, and when we get to the recommendations, which are 2 months from now, then I think we can make it, we're gonna have to do the votes then. Like, we're gonna have to make votes at that point on what report we put forward. So I guess for now, Joanna, the request is if you could take a look at that, understanding the caveat that there will be carve outs, certainly with certain employees with the age restrictions, elevation. So we'll have that model. Now, we're to the point before we get to public comment, we need to give any other models, and I know they're gonna come back next month with the HRA. And I know before you were taking a look at HRA for new hires going forward from January of 2025. Then you also were going to look at what, the 2015 date, what did we give you last time? I'm trying to remember. And then Wayne just gave you something for the HRAs too.
Basically, it's keeping consistent with it, like an A, B, and a C.
Yeah, A, B, and C, and then Wayne, I know you and the Representative Bombach had talked about, I hate to use the word inflation, but the cost, the 2%, kind of the Rhode Island COLA kind of model.
Maybe the, rather than try to search out data on the Plan G costs, maybe an easier thing to do would be to cost it out as 5,500 plus 2% starting in 2025, and then 5,500 plus 4% starting in 2025.
I mean, we could take a look at that, and again, that would include, I know, as we're looking at the different models, because you're right, because of the Medicare supplement F and G, because some people have talked about doing the modeling with the Medicare F and G. Are you familiar with that?
I would just ask Margaret if she is good with everything she's heard.
She's probably like putting her head out a window.
You're right, Carol. So I'm okay with running a 2% and a 4% increase, but to go back and find historical average trends for Plan G is kind of tough right now. So that would make me have 6 HRA runs per eligibility group.
So what are those then?
Margaret, I'll withdraw my Plan G request.
Okay, so if I do 2% trend and 4% trend, that gives me 6 HRA runs for each eligibility group.
And what is our assumption on those percentages? Because always we want to make sure what is our assumption? That you're gonna see that level of increase?
It would be the higher after 1/1/2015,
Right.
higher after 1/1/2025, or retire.
After 1/1/25.
Yeah, so the same three
Okay,
assumptions
three
we made
assumption
for the
based on-
eligibility changes.
So, and that's just a $5,100 assumption growing at 2% or 4%, depending on the run.
Right, so Margaret, you actually bring up an excellent point.
She does.
Our prior projections have been 5,100, Wayne asked for 5,500. So that's something for the committee to consider. Do we want to be consistent with what we've modeled historically? Or are we looking to change the number?
And we should be this.
I'm okay with whatever number you choose, but I believe it was based off of the cost of the current Medicare plan.
But that was done, that cost was done in 2021. We're 4 years past that at 2025, and that's why I raised it to 5,500.
This is at 2022, and it increases with the 2% or 4% by then. But also, I believe, if Chris, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it actually dropped down to 4,900.
Yeah, Margaret, that's correct. The current per retiree costs for Medicare, including the prescription drug, is about $4,900 per
Right.
year. So it has come down
You can
from
use
the
it
5,100.
So I think Wayne, their point statistically, you having been the good educator, I think they're trying to keep the consistency here, so the 5,100 is the consensus I'm getting a feel from Joanna and Margaret and Chris and them is probably the best way to have equitable projection. I respect deeply what you stated. It seems like healthcare costs are elevating, but for consistency, is that correct from a statistical analytics perspective?
Yeah, I feel it's a good number, especially knowing that the value has dropped. We will,
Okay.
you know, I think it's probably practical that it will continue to rise at some point, but
Oh,
at
it
least
will rise.
we're in the ballpark now. We're not overstating it hugely or understating it.
Okay. All right. So do I have like a consensus heartburn, people weighing others? Right now, we're looking at doing the 5,100 for consistency with those data analytics.
All I
Anyone?
can say is $450, $459 a month times 12 is not $4,100 or $4,900, excuse me.
The Medicare supplement that we got.
Oh, the supplement. Okay, I lost you for a minute there, Wayne. I mean, what did you mean by that? Because again, I know that. Are we talking about the premiums? What are we talking about?
The amount today that's being paid, that I see on my pension advisory is $459 a month. My recollection is that's going to increase by about 9% as of July 1st. That doesn't equal $4,900 a year.
Right, so Wayne, what you're talking about is the premium that the
Yeah.
state is paying on behalf. That's
Right.
not necessarily reflective of the actual cost.
So, yeah.
That's a whole nother issue, but I guess it doesn't make a lot of difference whether you're on 5,100 or 5,500. When you're looking at the long term, the $400 doesn't make a lot of difference. But I'm a little curious here and a little concerned about the way we're playing with numbers.
You need to come sit with me next time. I missed you today. You're usually right to my left.
I'll be there next time.
No pressure. You're excused. No pressure. So is there then the consensus? So waiting for now, we're gonna try to keep the consistency, use the 5,100. We may come back and be like, oh my gosh, we were off here, and change that before we make a final recommendation. Papers are dropping. Is there anyone that's not spoken today? I know this is heavy stuff on a Friday afternoon. We will get to the public in a moment. Anyone miss anything? No? Oh, boy. So with that, I'll turn to my co-chairs. I don't know if Senator Townsend or Representative Wambach have anything to say. Because have we done it? What are we missing on the agenda?
Thank you, Senator Governor Hull. No, I just want to echo your point about people digging into tough stuff on a Friday afternoon. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna end up with our agenda items. What are we missing here, Faith?
I think if the subcommittee does not have any further business to discuss, we're ready to move to public.
You're good, so we're okay on everything. All right, so we made it through here. All right, and so we'll see. I know we have a few hands raised. Diana Noonan's hand been raised. Go ahead. Is it Dina, Diana? Hang on, there's Diana. Okay. Oops, sorry.
It's Diana.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
About 10 days ago, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. He is scheduled for surgery next week, and the word cancer is daunting, and it's also been frightening, and it's rocked our family. I cannot imagine how much worse it would be if we had to worry about co-insurances and paying out of pocket prior to many surgeries and treatments involved. We simply do not have the funds. I am grateful that we do not have to have that added financial burden at this time. If this were not the case, we would likely be faced with mortgaging our recently paid off home. I cannot imagine that this committee can begin to believe that it is anything but immoral and unethical to take any level of medical benefits away from us at this point in our lives, especially when for over 30 years we had been told that while salaries were not great, our retirement benefits would be. When we planned for retirement, we expected the promised benefits to be part of our retirement plan. We are not just old people. We are not just pensioners and retirees and seniors. And my favorite, as you like to say, a declining population. We are people. who have aged, but we still have value. We are parents and grandparents, and we have busy lives. My husband and I are involved in our grandchildren's lives daily. We matter to them. They especially look forward to evenings at Mimi's and Pop-Pops wrapped in their sleeping bags on the floor watching a movie while eating the special popcorn that Clary is convinced only her Pop-Pop can make. We are important to our families, even though the state seems to believe their shortfall is more important than our very lives. It is inconceivable to me that this committee would consider any action that is less than grandfathering current retirees at the same level of health insurance coverage that we currently possess. It is unethical and immoral to go back on a 30-year agreement because you failed to uphold your part of that agreement. To expect that anything less than continuing to provide us with the Medicare supplemental Medigap insurance would be unconscionable. I believe that the state has an obligation to honor the agreement that exists between the state and its retirees. Employees were presented yearly with documents during which open enrollment that allowed them to choose from healthcare options. The agreement was signed and the promise was made. And at this point in my life, we are not in a position to supplement our income to cover thousands of dollars. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that this committee has made a commitment to the state's retirees, as shown with your lack of interest in retiree comments. Again and again, the allotted time for the retiree comments periods are shortened or not honored during the meeting. The recommendations that this committee makes will affect our financial security, our ability to get quality health care at the time that we need it. I also take exception to the idea that anything but grandfathering the grandparents is acceptable.
Thank you for sharing. Sorry to hear about your husband's diagnosis. I hope you also take advantage of our cancer treatment programs. We will go now to, I'll let you call them off.
To Karen Peterson.
Senator Peterson. Oh, you're not unmuted yet. Let's see. Can you get her unmuted? Senator Peterson, we're trying to get you unmuted. Are you there?
Shoot, we can try to come back.
*6, we can come back. Okay, we'll come back, Senator Peterson. Okay, go ahead.
Next would be Joan Delfatore.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joan.
Sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to brace for another professor. I am.
Yes, we know you.
I'm very happy to hear that the committee at this point is considering these plans for future retirees while leaving the current retirees in a original Medicare and a Medicare supplement, a group plan Medicare supplement. But in case it might be helpful, a few questions come to me from the perspective of someone who's experienced retirement that might be helpful in terms of thinking going forward. It's obviously much too early to be talking about what.
Hey, Joan, keep talking into your phone. You're fading in and out.
I'm actually talking on a computer. Can you hear me?
Now, yeah.
It's much too early to be considering what plans to put in an HRA marketplace, but a major concern among people who might be on an HRA is what plans would be available to us. The way it was presented today, it sounded as if we would actually have more choice in a marketplace than we would have on the open market, because brokers on the open market would steer us toward self-interested decisions that were in their own interest. But among the specific questions, what if a retiree does not like any of the plans in the marketplace? Would they have a guaranteed issue right to go in their own plan, even though the state would not pay for it? Another specific question, the statement was made that retirees could have the exact same coverage that the current retirees now have, but that's not guaranteed if a comparable plan were not in the marketplace. Future retirees cannot be guaranteed that in an HRA, they would have the same plan we have or the same coverage we have, because the marketplace might not include a plan of that nature. An example was given about a retiree on Via Benefits marketplace who wanted to change from one prescription plan to another. Okay, fine, but what if you want to change from one Medicare supplement to another? Could you still do that within the marketplace without going through medical underwriting? Could you change from one company to another without going through medical underwriting? So again, those are some of the issues that retirees have. And even if we're talking only about future retirees, it's still relevant. More thought needs to be given to what plans would be available, or retirees' concerns about what plans would be available and what are the implications for retiree choice, especially would we have guaranteed issue rights if we wanted to go off the marketplace and get our own plan? It's understood the state would not pay for it, but would future retirees be able to do that at all? Thank you.
You, Joe? Go ahead.
I'm going to try Senator Peterson again.
Senator Peterson, hopefully we can get it to work this time.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thank you, Madam Chair. I tuned in today expecting an objective explanation of HRAs, but instead I got an infomercial for VIA Benefits, which just happens to be owned by WTW. And this, in my opinion, was unethical and constitutes unfair competition. I'm sure there are lots of other benefit advisors who would like to make a sales pitch to the subcommittee, but they won't have that opportunity. And if I were a betting person, I'd bet that if the state chooses an HRA, VIA Benefits will get the contract. The other thing we know for sure is that we cannot trust the state to increase contributions to cover retiree healthcare expenses if the state goes with an HRA, especially after retirees reach their mid-80s when they need their health insurance the most. And my last point is this: a $5,100 annual contribution by the state for an HRA is more than medical costs, or even if it's the same. How does that help the state's finances? That doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that.
Linda Hastings.
Hi.
Good afternoon. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'm going to be a broken record here, but House Bill 75, Section 101 still directs the SEBC to implement that Medicare Advantage contract. Honest to goodness, you got to get that out of there. It's like last year you said, oh, we didn't realize what we were passing, those of you who are legislators, at least the ones I talked to. This year, you got to get that out of there. And I'm going to keep telling you until you do. I checked before this meeting, it's still in there. So secondly, listening to the talk about HRA worries me for a couple of reasons. One is, I think I heard somebody talking about, so their person will check to make sure that the retiree has paid their monthly benefits, to make sure before they go ahead and approve payment or something. So the retiree then has to start making monthly payments. You look, the older I get, the more I don't want to be having to do that kind of stuff. And I think that's not fair for older people to have to do. And I don't think it's fair to have to prepay for benefits. Although you all don't respond to us, I'd like to respond to the first speaker and tell you my heart goes out to you. And when I think about what you may have to confront in terms of expenses, I really hope they don't go to this marketplace, because I don't know how you're going to make it. I'm thinking about you and you got my heart.
And Ms. Hastings, thank you.
I'm not done.
Oh, sorry, thought you were done. Apologize.
I'm not done. I would also like to talk about what Senator Peterson said about trusting the state to authorize more money for those of us who reach 80 if we're in the marketplace and our expenses start outpacing what we're entitled to. That's you all saying to us, trust us. I got to tell you, if you'd said that to me a year ago, I might have done it. But this last year has taught me whatever's going to be done, we have to know it in advance and agree to it and understand it, because I think the state can't really be trusted right now. Now I'm done.
Thank you. I was gonna give you some time back, and hopefully through the end of this process, our goal is with the new committee, new eyes, good recommendations, and lots of trust, because we're all in it together. We're all about good benefits. So,
Okay, Bob Clarkin.
Bob Clarkin, and then Ray. Bob Clarkin.
Hi. I just can't, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I just can't believe. I worked for the state for 36 years, and I am just beside myself. I can't believe that you would knowingly allow Willis Towers Watson to make a presentation about HRAs and the limited HRA marketplace when they have a business relationship with Via Benefits, and make a sales pitch to you regarding having Via Benefits give you more information about their wonderful system. I just can't believe that you would allow them to make that presentation knowing that they have a business relationship with Via Benefits. There are plenty of other resources you could use to give you a presentation and a realistic, independent synopsis of what HRAs are in reality and how the Medicare marketplace is limited under third-party profit-seeking companies like WTW and Via Benefits that limit the choice of the supplement products that are available. And in Rhode Island, they go far enough to say that if you do not purchase your supplement insurance through their marketplace using their portal, you can't use the Rhode Island HRA funds to reimburse any of your out-of-pocket costs. So it's a very limited system that's driven by profit, profit, profit. Again, when I worked for the state of Delaware, in serious positions, we would have had management team meetings prior to letting anybody make a presentation that had an interest, a financial interest in dominating the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I would just ask Mr. Clarkin, if you would share with us, I know we're not supposed to have dialogue now, but I am doing that. Share with us in writing later, and I appreciate it because I know we've shared some of your emails for any other companies. I know many of us here assume today as a presentations were going to be made that there wouldn't be what would be perceived as an infomercial. If that happened, that certainly should not be the intent. The intent was to make sure that we would have an open discussion. And so I welcome the thought of others and names that you have or anyone listening in to Senator Peterson, to others, because that was certainly never an intent and we don't want that. So moving on, we have Representative Siegfried. Oh, you gotta unmute, right?
Okay, I believe I did. Can you?
You did. We can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Madam Chair and the entire committee, listening to the discussion today certainly confirms the fact that healthcare is a complicated issue for sure.
Yes.
I want to thank the comments from Secretary Geisenberg and Jeff Tassner for their insightful remarks today. And I would just, I'm kind of left with the understanding that I think the committee has got to really focus on what problem you're trying to solve. Is it the current unfunded liability? Is it future unfunded liability? Is it both or what? And the model, as Jeff said, and I think others, should be holistic. It shouldn't be piecemeal. I think you need to look at eligibility, design, and other factors altogether and get that model reviewed prior to coming before the committee. I would highly recommend that you spend time, perhaps maybe another meeting between now and the June 5th, which I think is your next scheduled meeting, to really hammer out a consensus on what the problem is you're trying to solve. And secondly, how the model will look from a holistic point of view. I think that's the only way you're really going to make sense out of this economically. I would also say that if your intent is to grandfather those already retired, that somehow, some way, that message gets across to everybody, because based on the comment, I don't believe it's everyone understands that. But again, I know it's a very difficult topic. There's a lot of moving parts, and I appreciate all of your energy and action. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have others? Our friend here in the room ran out. I think at other places Friday afternoon. Anyone else, anyone from the committee? Because if not, what we'll do is take all the feedback and to say thank you to Joanna and team. I know it's a lot of numbers, a lot of work during a busy season and graduations and life. Thank you for that. Our next meeting, and I'll turn certainly to my co-chairs to let them speak, but our next meeting before people run away is June 5th. And what time? Is from, oops, sorry.
1 to 3.
1 to 3. Wayne, no pressure. You don't have to come sit next to me, but I was lost without you today. Lean over and look at your papers. Anyone have any?
Lieutenant Governor, I will be happy to be next to your side next week.
I'm just joking. And watch me not be here. All right, I hope to be here. But with that, others, anyone, my colleagues, Representative Bombach or Senator Townsend, anything? They may have had to jump. Go ahead.
I'd like to thank Madam Chair and the DHR and other staff who have been helping us get more and more data so we can make better decisions. And especially I want to thank the public for their constant engagement, which indeed makes our whole process far stronger. Thank you.
Yep. And Senator Townsend, anything? I know he was with us earlier. And
No, nothing additional. Thank you.
thank you. Well, thank you all. We will see you on June 5th. Between them, a lot of numbers. Hope those of you have a good Memorial Day. Those of you who are veterans among us that served, really appreciate your service. And for those in the legislature, I know you won't rest, but try to get a little rest. We're at that busy point. And to all of you who gave us incredible feedback today, thank you so very much. And again, to Ms. Noonan, we really hope that you do take care with your husband. And there are a lot of sources that I hope you're taking advantage of. Call my office if you're not familiar with those. I'd be happy to give those to you. All right, well, thank you all. Motion to adjourn. Who wants to go? Anybody?
So moved.
All right, second. Oh, anyway, Jeff, got it. Happy Friday. Bye, guys. Can't do it. Ran out of here like no tomorrow.